take up one question for each of the speakers. So first to Sudha-ji. Veer Savarkar wrote a book in Marathi immediately after the Moplah genocide of the Hindus in Kerala called Mala Kai Kyache, which was translated into English as What is it to me? And this book is available now online also. Your comments?
That's very good observation. I have not read that book. What I wanted to say is that books in Malayalam did not happen. And that is very important because the place where this happened was in Kerala. The local language is Malayalam. The whole story was suppressed. And the personal account of this atrocity and the genocide of Hindus, like I said, was published 97 years later. The book was written originally in 1923, got published in 2020. So that itself is an atrocity and a re-victimization of the people who suffered. So we need more books. These need to be taught in school, not to create divisions, but to find reconciliation amongst our communities and to understand that, if you have differences, there are many ways to take care of it. You don't have to resort to violence that can never be forgotten. So let's not have differences and conflicts that last for centuries at a time, right? Let's have a more adult and mature conversation and educate everyone and find reasonable solutions to deal with differences. So that's what I would say.
Thank you very much, Sudha-ji. And maybe to expand, one's own knowledge and understanding, because you are so deeply embedded in this Moplah rebellion and massacre and genocide. It may be a useful idea to also do some research on this book by Veer Savarkar. The next question is to Professor Saini. And thank you for that presentation again. Ideologically and spiritually, is there something which can replace communism in China in the future?
Yeah, it's not only those people being persecuted, like Bongo members and other ethnic minority don't like the government. I think the majority of Chinese people are against the ruling Communist Party. So they actually don't need, as I mentioned, there are more than 400 million people that's cut the ties from the communist organization. They don't need actually the external help. Rather, they don't want the governments, the people to help the ruling party, prevent them from collapse. So the Communist Party is doomed to collapse very soon by Chinese people who suffer seriously on that. Yeah, one thing on the comments. During the 74 years of ruling of this evil communism, most of the times at peacetime, there's no wars. They have killed 80 million or more Chinese, okay, in his rulings. 80 millions, if those people die, stand up and holding hand one by one, they can go around the earth at the equator 6 times. That's the size of which is larger than all the unnatured deaths in Chinese 5,000 years of history, and larger than the casualty of World War I and II. That's this ruling party against Chinese people and Chinese culture.
Thank you, Professor. The last question for this session to Mr. Brett Chapman. George Washington University and other institutions often make statements that we acknowledge we are on stolen land do you think that these public statements have an effect or benefit?
Personally, I really don't. I think that it's an empty gesture to be able to continue doing nothing. And lots of times when I hear them, they're quite inaccurate, right? Because they're just looking on Wikipedia and like, okay, well, Washington, D.C., well, here's all the nations that, associated with it. Well, these crimes perpetuated by the United States took place. It's very important, the timeline of it, right? Because they would move nations from one place to another. So if you were like in Georgia, you could say, well, it's the Cherokees, the Catawbas, whatever. But then they're moving people out, like in Oklahoma. If you did a land acknowledgement in Oklahoma, you'd have to list like 90 people. It's all of these nations, that really is not theirs because it was actually indigenous to like the Osage first. But then they'll say a whole litany of them just because they just want to make sure they cover everybody. And so, no, it doesn't really do anything in my estimation because what the first small step ought to be is some type of small land repatriation, which would be quite easy for members of Congress to do over there. If you look in the West, there's tons of federally owned lands, especially national parks. Everybody loves the national parks, but where those came from in the West, those were taken from indigenous nations. And so to me, the land acknowledgement reminds me a lot of this ongoing thing where they're like, well, we'll put a Native American in charge of stewarding the land, right? Or they can just have some small role in it, but we're going to keep the land. And so it's the same thing. It has to be some real tangible effort. And so that's what people need to be calling for. Not so much just, a reminder we exist. I mean, that's nice, of course, but it's very insufficient because, as I said in my speech, it's a very uncomfortable proposition for this country, which claims, again, when we talk about Ukraine and all this other stuff, how this country is one so righteous, right? It's mighty righteousness flowing out of this country. But doing nothing about it, even though as the continuity of government, very important, still exists, nothing done.
Thank you very much. One big round of applause again for these most